Welcome back to the Deep Dive. This is the show for you if you need to get up to speed on something quickly, but, without getting buried in jargon.
Exactly. And today we're doing a deep dive into the thinking behind a language learning resource. It's called Listen and Feel English Podcast.
Right.
So our mission here isn't just to summarize what they do. We're trying to pull out the intellectual DNA, really. We want to give you that shortcut to understanding the method itself.
And what really hooked us, what made us want to do this deep dive, was this central claim they make. It's almost poetic. They say, this is a place where you don't just learn English, you feel it.
Yeah.
And that word feel is so powerful. I mean, we've all done the drills, the vocab lists, the grammar books. That's all about knowing.
Yeah.
But feeling a language, let's unpack that. What does that actually mean for someone trying to learn?
Well, it's a huge shift, really. It's about moving from what we call declarative knowledge to procedural knowledge.
Okay, what's the difference?
So declarative is knowing that something is true. You know the rule for the past perfect tense. Procedural, on the other hand, is knowing how to do something. You don't think about the rule.
Like riding a bike versus reading the manual, for one.
Exactly like that. When a resource talks about feeling something, it's trying to get that knowledge into your intuitive muscle memory.
So traditional methods, they sort of keep you in the conscious analytical part of your brain. You're always translating in your head before you speak.
Mm-hmm.
But this feel approach, it's aiming for something more automatic.
Automaticity. That's the word. It's trying to move that processing from the slow, deliberate part of the brain to the faster, more intuitive areas. And, neuroscience backs this up. When you learn something with emotion and context, it just sticks better.
It's more accessible when you're under pressure.
Right. When you feel the rhythm, the intonation, the context, you're just acquiring it more naturally. You're immersed. And that's what leads to those aha moments that you're looking for.
Okay, but hang on. If you're moving away from consciously learning the rules, how do you stop a beginner from just developing bad habits? Where's the correction if it's all based on intuition? That seems a little risky.
That's a great question, and it's a really important piece of friction to address. The answer, I think, lies in the quality and the sheer repetition of the input they provide.
The stuff you listen to?
Exactly. By giving you really carefully chosen, authentic material, which we'll get into, they're basically trusting your brain to figure out the correct patterns on its own over time.
So the intuition is built by just hearing the right way to say things over and over in a real context.
Yes. Instead of trying to build a sentence from scratch using grammar rules, you're just absorbing the correct structures. And this, I think, is designed to get rid of the anxiety that comes with the old way.
I see. Because the worst part of learning a language for so many people is that moment where you freeze.
Right.
You know the rule, you know the word, but you can't get it out fast enough to keep the conversation moving.
Precisely. That hesitation, that self-consciousness, it just kills your confidence. So if we look at their ultimate goal for you, which is to speak English with confidence, then this idea of feeling, it becomes, essential.
Because confidence isn't about having perfect grammar.
Not at all. It's that internal feeling that you can get your point across without that agonizing, slow internal translation happening in your head. So this natural emotional connection is the direct path to getting rid of that hesitation.
That's a key distinction, isn't it? The difference between intellectual knowledge and actual communication confidence. It shows they get that the emotional barrier can be even bigger than the intellectual one.
Absolutely. I mean, think about it. If you're standing there trying to calculate the right phrasal verb, you're constantly self-editing. By focusing on utility, on feeling, on making the words just sort of roll off the tongue, they remove that cognitive friction that makes people feel ashamed or go silent or, ultimately just quit.
Okay, so we've established the why. The philosophy is all about intuition, feeling, confidence. Let's get into the how. What are the actual tools they use? The sources list 3 specific formats: real conversations, short dialogues, and stories.
And that's not just a random list, it's a very strategic blend. Each one of those formats is designed to tackle a different part of the learning process.
All right, let's break that down then. Start with real conversations. What's the strategy there?
The key word there is real. I mean, the dialogues you get in a textbook, they're perfect, right? Perfectly structured, polite. No one ever talks over anyone else.
Completely unrealistic.
Completely. Real conversations are messy. They have filler words like, people change speeds, they pause, they interrupt each other a little bit.
So they're throwing you right into the deep end of how people actually speak.
Yes. And that gives you authentic context and flow. You start to pick up on the actual cadence of the language, the cultural bits that are so important. It trains your ear for the reality of speaking, not the classroom version.
That makes a lot of sense. It bypasses that academic stiffness.
Hmm.
So then, where do the short dialogues fit in? Why have those if the real conversations are so important?
The short dialogues are all about managing the cognitive load. I mean, if all you had were these long, complex, messy conversations, a beginner would just drown.
They'd get overwhelmed.
Totally. So these short, sharp exchanges, ordering a coffee, asking for directions, they act as these little digestible chunks of learning.
The micro-learning piece of it.
That's it. It lets you lock onto one specific set of words or pronunciation pattern without all the noise of a longer conversation. It makes sure those basic patterns are absorbed cleanly.
Okay, and that brings us to the third piece of the strategy.
Yeah.
The stories. And this is where it gets really interesting for me, because this feels like it connects directly back to that idea of feeling the language. Why stories?
This is maybe the most powerful part of their whole strategy, especially for memory. Our brains are just wired for narrative. It's how we make sense of the world. So when you embed language vocab, grammar, idioms inside a story, it engages your emotions. And all the research shows that emotional engagement massively boosts long-term memory. You don't just memorize a word. You remember the character who used it and why.
So the story becomes a kind of hook that the vocabulary and grammar can hang on. It gives it context, an emotional anchor. It makes it sticky.
Absolutely. You remember the experience, and the language just comes along for the ride. So by combining these three things, the authentic flow from real conversations, the digestible chunks from short dialogues, and the memorable context from stories, they're really engineering a path for you to improve naturally.
And it all comes back to that phrase they use, real-life English you can use every day. It's a promise, really, that they're prioritizing what's useful over what's, academically abstract.
That's right. They're designing it for immediate application, which leads right into the specific things they choose to focus on.
Let's drill down on that. If the goal is utility, what are the specific pillars they build on? I mean, you can't learn all of English at once. So what are the three things they explicitly say they focus on?
They boil it down to this really effective triad, and it tells you everything about their focus on practical communication. Number one, clear pronunciation.
Okay.
Number two, useful vocabulary. And number three, real-life English.
Let's spend a minute on that. Clear pronunciation first. Why is that prioritized over, say, perfect grammar?
Because communication breaks down the second someone can't understand you. You could have the most flawless grammar in the world, but if your pronunciation is impossible to understand, the conversation is over.
It's about being intelligible.
Exactly. That's the first step to confidence. It's the difference between speaking and actually being heard. They get that if you can say the words confidently, even a simple sentence will work.
Okay, so that reduces the stress on both sides of the conversation. So the second pillar, useful vocabulary. How is that an efficiency hack?
Well, it really leans into the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle. Something like 20% of the words in a language are used 80% of the time.
So they just ignore the obscure academic stuff.
Seems like it. They focus your energy only on the words and phrases that are going to open the most doors for you in everyday life, in business, in travel. It's a huge time saver.
And you need that. You don't have time to memorize endless lists of things you'll never use. You want the words that let you have a real conversation today.
Precisely. And that third pillar, real-life English, just wraps it all together. It's the glue.
How so?
It makes sure the useful words you're learning are presented in the way they're actually used. It's about teaching the shortcuts, the common pairings of words, the little bits of slang that make you sound more natural, less like you're reading from a dictionary.
And this whole approach, this triad, it makes sense for the audience they say they're for, right? They mention both beginner or an intermediate learner.
Yeah, and that's a clever balancing act. The beginner gets so much from those short dialogues. That's their foundation for pronunciation and basic useful words.
But the intermediate learner probably has that already. They're stuck on a plateau.
For them, the real conversations are the challenge. That's where they get exposed to faster speech, more complex idioms, the stuff that pushes you past that intermediate rut. And the stories can work for both levels, just introducing more nuanced ideas for the intermediate listener.
So the whole thing is designed to meet you where you are. The deep dive really pulled out the formula here. It's about moving you from just knowing things to speaking with confidence. They do it through immersion, practical examples, and this focus on feeling the language.
That's the core of it. It's less about traditional instruction, telling you why a rule is the way it is, and much more on showing you how it's used in the wild. It's about building that automatic, confident communication.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Not just for learning English, but for learning any complex skill. This whole approach is about using these small, memorable, story-based chunks to kind of bypass that slow, analytical road.
And if you zoom out, if you think about the bigger picture, it raises a really important question for any learning you're doing, whether it's a new piece of software or investing or even cooking.
Right.
How much faster could you master something by focusing on the feeling of it, on the natural flow, the intuition, the practical use, compared to just rigidly studying the rules in a textbook?
It makes you wonder about your own habits. Maybe we should all be focusing more on case studies and real-world examples than just theory. Maybe we should stop calculating so much and just start doing.
It's a powerful thought to consider.
And for anyone ready to apply this idea directly to their English, our sources have a very clear call to action that really sums it all up. Subscribe to Listen and Feel English podcast and start your journey today.